Prepare to have your health questions answered here on Safe, Effective Natural Solutions with Dr. Todd Binkley, owner of Binkley Healing Center in downtown Ventura. Now, here's Dr. Todd.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Todd Binkley, board-certified doctor of non-force chiropractic and practitioner of functional medicine. Functional medicine means using standard diagnostic tests to identify not something that's so bad that you need medical care, a prescription or a surgical procedure or referral to a specialist, but just when normal function has gone by the wayside, when your organs and tissues, when your liver, your kidneys, your thyroid, your immune system, your cardiovascular system, when these systems and organs are no longer functioning like they should, like they did when you were in your teens and your 20s and everything was working really well. You can test for this as well as diagnose conditions like diabetes and liver disease and etc. So it's basically prevention. We're looking for ways to identify things earlier so that you can use better food, exercise, and supplements to correct them instead of becoming dependent on standard Western medical care in the pharmaceutical industry for the rest of your life. So if you're interested in that, send me your questions. I love answering questions. Email me at drbinkley@binkleyhealingcenter.com. Text me at 805-218-3939. The ringer on my phone is always off. I already get so many spam phone calls that I can never answer the phone. But I'll be happy to talk to you on the phone as well. If you want to reach me on the phone, please just send me a text or an email and say, please call me, and I'll call you back. So we've been talking about hormones for the past several episodes. Also remind everyone that's interested that all the past episodes of the show are available to listen to anytime you want on my website, binkleyhealingcenter.com. My last name, healing, like health and healing.com, binkleyhealingcenter.com. They're also available as podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. So this episode, we're going to talk about cortisol. Cortisol is one of the main hormones that is produced by the adrenal glands. Anybody who has significant stress in their lives, if anybody's ever heard of adrenal fatigue, when you have excess stress, it first causes your adrenals to produce too much cortisol, and that can have damaging effects. And then eventually you wear out. You cause fatigue of the adrenals. The adrenals lose their ability to produce sufficient amounts of cortisol. So that's what we're looking for. The cortisol is always highest in the morning. There's a normal curve throughout the day. So cortisol is literally what helps wake you up in the morning. When you wake up, when you open your eyes and you're kind of groggy and you hit the alarm or you hit snooze or whatever, whenever you finally actually get up, that is in large part the result of your adrenal glands pumping out cortisol. It wakes you up in the morning. So it's for that reason, most doctors, when they want to check your cortisol levels, they'll send you to get a blood test. For one blood test at 9 o'clock in the morning, one blood sample of cortisol. Well, that is the most important time of day if you're only going to test it once to see if you're making adequate amounts to wake you up in the morning. But that's not a very good way of really evaluating your adrenal gland function. That's why it's so important. More than any of the other hormones, cortisol really needs to be done with a salivary hormone test. I've been talking about the difference between testing hormones in saliva and blood on all these past few episodes. There are some things that you have to test with the blood test, like hormone issues related to pregnancy and menstruation. But for aging issues, for stress, like we're going to be talking about today, and for menopausal women, it's important to test a saliva test for the hormones, which measures your average of the hormones throughout the day and not just a snapshot in time for a hormone that's going up and down, up and down, up and down every 10 minutes all day long. So the normal cortisol curve is highest in the morning, and then it drops down around midday to about half the level that it is when you first wake up. And then it continues going down to a very low level in the evening and then remains very low at night. That's the normal curve. So, but that is the curve, but you want it to be within a normal range as well. So if you were to look at a graph and you would see this line starting out high in the morning, dropping it down about half in the midday, and then continuing down to very low at night, there's also a range above and below that perfect line within which you want your cortisol levels to be. And when it is, then you feel good and everything works well. And if it's above or below that range, then that's when we have problems. So that's what we're looking for on the test. You spit in 4 tubes, a half hour after waking up in the morning, lunchtime, dinner time, and bedtime. So that's how we get those 4 points to plot that curve. So deficiency of cortisol causes fatigue, can also cause low blood pressure. So most people hear about high blood pressure all the time. It's much more common for people, especially as you get older, to have high blood pressure than it is to have low blood pressure. But people who have, you know someone who has low blood pressure, especially someone that's older, but really anyone with low blood pressure that no doctor has ever been able to explain it to them, deficient cortisol, deficient adrenal function is very often the cause of that. And most doctors never test for this, never test for it effectively, never do a saliva test to measure it throughout the day. So I've had some really amazing cases with people with low blood pressure by testing and restoring their adrenal function. So stress causes overproduction of cortisol, which results in many health issues. And when it persists for a long time, your adrenal glands basically just lose the ability to make enough. There are receptors in almost every tissue in your body that affect nearly every organ system. So cortisol affects your nervous system, your immune system, your heart, your entire cardiovascular system, your lungs, your respiratory system, your reproductive system, and your musculoskeletal system, your muscles, tendons, ligaments, and bones. And it's not a primary cause of osteoporosis, but appropriate amounts can help keep your bones strong. It can also help balance blood sugar, control weight, keep your immune system healthy. It can affect sleep and mood. Can help with anxiety and depression. It affects protein synthesis and influences your testosterone and estrogen ratio and your DHEA and insulin ratio. So that sounds a little technical, but we've been talking about these on previous episodes. All of your hormones influence one another, and most of the hormones produced by your endocrine system are controlled by your pituitary gland. And adequate normal cortisol levels affect that balance, your ability of your pituitary to control all of your endocrine glands and keep them in balance. And it also affects your thyroid, especially the thyroid. The adrenal glands and the thyroid work hand in hand. So what causes too much cortisol? Well, stress. Stress is the most common cause of elevated cortisol, but some other things can increase it. Depression, contraceptives, infections, especially chronic infections that people have that they don't know about. This is identified by a low white blood cell count on a blood test. Poor sleep, inflammation, hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, pain. Just having pain is a form of stress, but sometimes people don't make that connection. They're surprised to find out that their cortisol is going up just because they have some pain that they've never been able to figure out how to resolve. So a lot of times they'll help people with that by releasing tension from their muscles and joints. And also, like with so many things, exposure to toxins. Chemical and heavy metal toxins are ubiquitous in the environment. We're all exposed to them. They are a form of stress on nearly every system in your body and can cause your cortisol levels to go up. So obviously, your cortisol levels, if they remain too high, your adrenals eventually wear out, cortisol level goes down. But in addition to just normal stress causing low cortisol over time, nutrient deficiencies can impair your adrenal gland's ability to make adequate cortisol. Dysbiosis, which just means like dysfunction, bio, bacteria, things that are alive. Dysbiosis means there's too many bad bacteria and not enough good bacteria in your gut. Chronic inflammation, chronic pain, toxin exposure, overexercising, hypoglycemia, poor sleep, depression, severe allergies. So basically, so many of the things that cause too much cortisol cause too low cortisol as well, because after you've had high cortisol for too long, you end up with low cortisol caused by the same things. So excess cortisol also can result in compromised immune function, confusion, shaking between meals, impaired memory, low energy, night sweats, binge eating, increased blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood sugar, increased risk of osteoporosis, increased insulin resistance, and risk of diabetes. So anybody who's diabetic or pre-diabetic really should get their cortisol levels tested, because interactions between cortisol and DHEA and most of your hormones can strongly interact with the things that are causing and the things that you need to do to prevent or reverse diabetes. Excess cortisol can also increase infections through its effect on the immune system. It can cause thin skin, fatigue, irritability, sugar cravings, muscle weakness, weight gain, sleep disturbances, and impaired thyroid function. So especially, this is where one of the main ways cortisol and thyroid function, your adrenals and your thyroid, work hand in hand. Excess cortisol from too much production from the adrenal glands can impair the conversion of T4, thyroxine. Anybody who's got low thyroid and is taking thyroid medication, like levothyroxine or Synthroid, that is, thyroxine is T4, but T4 doesn't do anything in your body. The active form, it must be converted from T4 to T3, and then some of that T3 must be unbound into free T3. Free T3 is the only active thyroid hormone that does anything in your body, and excess cortisol can impair that conversion of T4 into T3 and then into free T3. And excess cortisol can also cause increased risk of leaky gut syndrome. So abnormal levels of cortisol are associated with menopause, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, depression, impotence, anorexia nervosa, diabetes, memory loss, irritable bowel syndrome, exacerbation of autoimmune conditions like multiple sclerosis, panic disorders, PMS, premenstrual syndrome, sleep disorders we've talked about, osteoporosis, heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, even breast cancer and Alzheimer's. So it's really important to get these tested. If you know someone who's stressed and has never been tested, never had their cortisol levels tested, please encourage them to do so. Just doing the cortisol levels, people ask how much it costs. I mentioned on the previous episode the comprehensive saliva hormone panel with all 3 estrogens, testosterone, DHEA, and progesterone, plus all 4 cortisol tests to get that curve throughout the day is $220 for all of those. But we can also, sometimes if somebody's just stressed and doesn't have any signs or symptoms of sex hormone challenges or symptoms, we'll just test the cortisol levels. And that, I think it's about $80 or $90 to just do the 4 cortisol tests. So send me an email if you have questions about that. So abnormal levels are associated with all of these things. Treatment of adrenal dysfunction and abnormal cortisol levels includes fixing many of the basic nutrient deficiencies that impair your adrenal gland's ability to make adequate cortisol, like deficiencies of vitamin C and B vitamins, minerals like calcium and magnesium and zinc and selenium, copper and manganese. This is one of the main reasons I recommend that everyone take a good, and good is always 4 capsules a day, sometimes 3 if you're way under 120 pounds, but a good multivitamin and mineral supplement, mainly for the minerals. Most people do not get enough minerals, especially calcium, magnesium, zinc, and selenium. These are very commonly deficient minerals. Manganese is also a fairly common deficiency. But actually, before I get into the ways of treating it, the most important thing to do if you have abnormal cortisol levels is to reduce your stress. So we always start there, identify the stresses that you're having now. And there's often lots of ways. It's different with everyone. It's kind of hard to really discuss that here. Everyone's familiar with stress. There's lots of different ways to reduce various forms of stress in your life. How I can help is a lot of times stress is either caused by or exacerbated by pain and stiffness in your muscles and joints. I'm a non-force chiropractor. I can always help anybody with any physical pain anywhere in their body, because most pain in your body, physical pain, is caused by patterns of tension in your muscles that create inflammation, irritate your joints, inflame your joints, make it likely for you to injure your joints like herniated disc, or cause arthritis in your hips or your shoulders or your knees, tendons, muscles, tendons like plantar fasciitis, carpal tunnel syndrome, pressure on nerves from tension and inflammation in your tendons and joints. So all kinds of pain can be stressors that affect your cortisol levels, and those things can often be addressed with treatment on the table. So once together we've done everything we can to reduce your stress levels or the effects of the stress you have, because sometimes you can't reduce your stress. But here's an interesting thing. I heard it has been said that one person's stress is another person's form of stimulation, right? So something that could be exciting to some person could drive somebody else crazy and actually affect their health. But anyway, there's always ways to reduce stress. Some are easy, some are not so easy, but we always want to start there. But then obviously it is very common when I test people's adrenals where we need to actually do some treatment directly for the adrenal glands. And one of the simplest ways to do this is take adrenal glandulars. So there are supplements that are made from ground up adrenal glands from healthy young mammals that have all the nutrients our adrenal glands need to make healthy adrenal gland cells and healthy adrenal gland hormones. So they're called adrenal glandulars. There's lots of different companies that make them. Standard Process, Doctors Research are some of the ones that I use. And that's the fastest way. So if somebody's severely deficient in adrenal function, I'll put them on adrenal glandulars. And you usually feel an effect from that in 2 or 3 weeks. And you usually don't need to do that long term. Sometimes 3 or 4 months, sometimes up to 6 months, usually not much longer than that, or maybe a very, very low dose. If you're under a lot of stress, again, it goes hand in hand with how much stress you have. But usually you can get adrenal function back up into the normal range with glandulars and sometimes adaptogenic herbs. I usually do both, actually, after about 3 to 4, sometimes up to 6 months. And then long-term, adaptogenic herbs help just deal with the daily stress of life. So what does that mean? Adaptogenic herbs. These are herbs that don't necessarily stimulate anything that's deficient or suppress anything that's in excess, but modulate. So they help your adrenal glands, in this case, work normally, produce the normal amount. So a lot of these things have been around for years. You definitely don't want to go to some store and buy some cheap Chinese herbs from some company you've never heard of. These things can be dangerous and often are laced with medications. But there are many excellent top shelf companies, like the ones I mention all the time on this show, Designs for Health, Orthomolecular Products, Doctors Research. Gaia Pro is one of the ones that I use for adaptogenic herbs for adrenal support. Herbs like rhodiola and ginseng, ashwagandha, licorice, and several others can help restore and maintain your normal function, help your adrenal glands continue to make and work normally again on their own, and then continue to make normal amounts even when you still have normal stress, whatever normal stress is for you. I'm Dr. Todd Binkley. You're listening to Safe, Effective, Natural Solutions to Almost Any Health Challenge. We've been talking about hormones for the last several episodes. We were talking about cortisol levels and adrenal function today. Stress causes adrenal dysfunction. Initially, it causes overproduction, and then eventually, after long-term stress, causes a suppression of adrenal gland function. We see this all the time. If you know someone who has a lot of stress and they've never been tested for adrenal function, it's a very good idea to encourage them to do that. And the best way to do that is with a saliva test where you spit in 4 tubes. So we get that curve of normal function throughout the day. Half hour after waking, noon, dinner time, and bedtime is when we collect the samples. And that gives us that nice normal curve of cortisol and whether or not it is within range. So let's talk about a couple of cases. I had a 57-year-old man who came to me who was in a lot of pain. He was trying to put off getting his knees replaced. He had horrible pain in his knees, and I got him doing some stretches that helped a lot. But long before he came to see me, he had been taking medication for many, many, many years. He'd been taking Vicodin for years, and then, in my opinion, his idiot physician that he was seeing switched him to OxyContin, which is just crazy. He needs to resolve the source of the pain, not put him on opiates that cause overdoses all over the country. We're in an opioid. Anyone who listens to the news that knows we're in an opioid crisis around the country, and OxyContin is one of the worst of the worst. So anyway, he was getting off of that. The doctor that switched him from Vicodin to OxyContin died, and he had to get a new doctor, and the new doctor said, okay, you've got 3 months to get off of the OxyContin. And so I was helping him with that by doing some things to show him how to stretch the muscles in his legs, get some pressure off of the knees, reduce some of the pain naturally, reduce the cause of the pain. But he was also gradually weaning himself off of the OxyContin. And so I tested his adrenals and did some blood work on him, and he had a bunch of things going on. He needed some support for his cardiovascular system. He was also pretty heavy. We had to put him on some things to help reduce his cholesterol and inflammation in his vascular system and lower his blood pressure. He had some inflammation throughout the body. I gave him some support for some natural nutrients for inflammation like turmeric and some others. Nattokinase, there's a product that the Designs for Health makes called nattocerezymes that has systemic enzymes, analogs of nattokinase and serapeptase, which reduce inflammation in the vasculature, in the blood vessels, and in the bones and joints. So he had some other things on his blood work, low protein, the common things that I see. And his cortisol levels were really, really low. So I gave him some support for that, several things at once. He had a lot of things going on. But what stands out, and what he later told me about, he was so shocked and surprised by and excited by, is he had taken off early in this process, I think maybe a little over a month after he started weaning himself off of OxyContin. He had driven to Vegas by himself. Was going to be there for a weekend conference. And he got there and he realized he only had one pill. He was still taking, a low dose of OxyContin. He couldn't get off of it completely. And he only had one pill, and he forgot to bring the bottle of OxyContin with him. He didn't get it in his suitcase or whatever. He found one in a pocket, and that was all he had, which was, it's very difficult. You've probably seen in the movies when people try to stop cold turkey on these things. It's just like trying to get off of heroin. Severe, severe side effects if you just stop cold turkey. So he was really worried, but he had his supplements with him. And even though he only had one OxyContin, he was able to get through this he thought it was a miracle, actually. That was the word he used. He got through his 2-day conference because he was taking his supplements to reduce inflammation. He was doing a couple of stretches when he had time. He didn't actually do that much stretching, but he did some. But he was taking nutrients that reduced all these horrible effects that were contributing to his pain and to his anxiety. And it was helped. It didn't obviously resolve his symptoms, but he was able to get through the weekend, do his conference, and drive home by himself without, having the severe side effects that he expected while he was trying to get off. So the upshot of that is he was able to get off OxyContin completely much earlier. He was in this, his doctor was going to give him 3 months to do it. I think he did it in about 6 weeks. He was very excited to finally get off of that completely. And, he still had some side effects of not taking that. It's difficult to stay off of it, but the supplements were helping him, manage it, basically keep it controllable. And so now we just have him on a low dose of these adaptogenic herbs that I was talking about before, things like rhodiola and ginseng, and some basic nutrients to keep all of his organs and systems healthy and strong. The multivitamin that I recommend for everybody, vitamin D, fish oil, an anti-inflammatory nutrient, a good source of curcumin from turmeric, helps with the inflammation that he's always going to have because of the arthritis in his joints. And we've just got him to where he's feeling good all the time now with better food, a little bit of exercise, and a few supplements. And so he's very happy about that. His problems aren't completely gone, but we started way late with him, and he's much better off than he would have been if he had continued doing the things that his medical doctor was telling him to do. And, this was a couple of years ago. He still hasn't had his knees surgery. He's been able to just maintain it tolerably with the things that we've been doing. So he's very happy about that. So if you know somebody that has symptoms like this, please, I'd love the chance and opportunity to help them, especially if they've never had their cortisol levels, stress levels checked. Anybody who has a lot of stress should get their adrenal gland function tested with a saliva hormone test. Thank you for listening. I will see you right here on KDAR 98.3 FM next Friday at 4 o'clock. Have a fantastic weekend.
You've been listening to Safe, Effective Natural Solutions with Dr. Todd Binkley. If you have a health question you want discussed on the show, email your health questions to Dr. Binkley at binkleyhealingcenter.com. Take advantage of this opportunity to ask questions for yourself and for your loved ones, because our health matters. Join him next Friday at 4 p.m. for safe, effective natural solutions, right here on 98.3 The Word, KDAR.